Welcome to the Rock is George podcast. I'm your host, George Dionne, and this is episode 147. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to hit that like, follow, or subscribe button on the platform you're listening to us on. You can also check out my work at the loudest.com on the planet, knac.com, for exclusive heavy metal and hard rock interviews, live show coverage, and more. My guest for this episode is vocalist and guitarist Gallop of the Massachusetts-based heavy metal act, Ice Giant. Ice Giant is set to release their sophomore album, Ghost of Humanity, on September 8th. And here's Gallop to tell you more about it. If I knew absolutely nothing about Ice Giant, how would you describe the band's music to me?
Oh my goodness. That's a great question. It's very grandiose and epic. We like to do a lot of storytelling, so we enjoy writing music that reflects, the feelings that we might tell in our stories. So, for instance, our album that we are putting out in September is sort of it's got anger, it's got melancholy, a lot of those, sort of sad emotions, I guess. But, we hope to write to do those kinds of feelings justice. And then if you wanted to compare it to other subgenres and stuff that we have that metal people might listen to. Sorry, I just got off a plane. But it's melodic death metal, symphonic death metal, progressive metal, that kind of thing.
So Ice Giant formed in 2017. I know you've had some band member changes over the years. So how did the current version with yourself, Eddie Shefflett, Daniel Salant, Alexander Paiva come together?
So it's actually 2016 where we started playing. We did our first show in February of that year. And then the lineup that we have now came together as I want to say a year ago at this point, because that's when Alex joined. And then Dan has been in the band for about 2 years at this point. And then Eddie has been in it since 2017. And I've been here the whole time. Eddie and I were great friends growing up around the Berklee College of Music area. He and I just kind of ran with similar crowds and bands, going to all sorts of underground shows around Boston, which was super fun. And so eventually, just in knowing each other and playing in separate bands for a long time, we, eventually developed a working relationship where he joined up with Ice Giant. He and I have been together for all 6 of those years, actually. So that's really cool. So he and I have a long-standing working relationship. And then Dan joined because our previous bass player was no longer in the band. It's actually really funny. When he joined, or rather when we approached him to ask him to join, apparently his thought was something along the lines of maybe I'll do this for a couple shows and maybe I'll get some some playing experience, blah blah blah. And then we showed him the new record that we are about to put out, and apparently that made him change his thought process to something more along the lines of, "Holy shit, yes, I want to be in this band." Not to toot my own horn or anything, but that's makes me feel good anyway. So that's that. And then Alex joined because again, we were down a drummer this time. Dan is in another band with Alex called Perennial Quest. And so we just approached Alex saying hey, you already work with Dan. Do you want to also work with us? And luckily the answer was yes. And so here we've been.
So you have an album coming out. It's on September 8th. It's called Ghost of Humanity. This is sort of a 6-year-long journey to get this album out. What were some of the obstacles that were in the way to get to this point?
Oh my goodness. How long do you have? No, I'm just joking. So you already touched on the personnel changes, and that has certainly been a thing for us. We need to make sure that everybody from their personalities to what they want to play as musicians all mesh really well with what we're trying to do here. And so, just through various factors, we have been able to finally form the unit that we have now after 6 years. We're very, very happy with that. But because of that process, it took a bit for us to, be able to solidify the record. And then on the other hand, or sorry, another thing is that I'm transgender. And so I went through a very big transition, still am going through it, that, kind of made me have to reassess like some mental health stuff, basically like get back on my feet as a brand new person. And so that was a challenge that I thankfully have had a lot of support with. I'm very, very happy with myself nowadays. So I'm grateful for that. And then I think the last thing is just like trying to like just find like a sound that we are satisfied with, because we put out a we're calling it a demo nowadays. Back in 2017, the songs were very cool, but it sounded like we recorded it in our basement, which is what we did anyway. So with that sound, we just really wanted to dedicate ourselves to making sure that the record this time around sounded exactly like how we wanted it and super professional.
So we're here. You're finally here. The album's coming out soon. You describe it as a thematic space odyssey about the final survivors of the human race as they escape from a post-apocalyptic Earth and try to find a new home. Is this whole album a concept album, or is it just stories that tie into that description?
It is a whole story. So from the beginning, it details humanity leaving Earth because we have depleted all its resources, not been kind to the environment, all the stuff you see in the news, basically. They end up on a different planet that can sustain their lives, and they make friends with the native aliens that have already been there. And then one of them gets the brilliant idea of, you know what I miss? Being in power. And then they essentially coup the aliens, retake over, and then don't really change, then ruins that environment and depletes all those resources. The overarching lesson is that, if we don't do something about the way that we are behaving right now, then that is going to be our fate inevitably. Like, the takeaways are very environmentalist, very anti-capitalist. It's supposed to be a story as much as like a foreshadowing, if that makes sense.
No, looking around the world around us, it makes sense.
Yeah, right. For sure.
So you've put out 3 singles so far ahead of the album's release. Let's kind of talk about what inspired the song Serenity of Darkness.
Serenity of Darkness is the part in the story where our heroes, if you will, have already left our planet, and they are essentially just flying through space searching for some place to live. And so the song is supposed to evoke this sense of both wanderlust but also homesickness at the same time. I wrote that one with a ton of very grandiose melodies, so that it just sounds very emotional and epic, and I just wanted it to be I think of the right words for this one. I've never how when you describe something to your bandmates, you have all of your in language, and then you have to figure out how to translate it to the real world. But it's the song about wandering through space, and in that it's we have the line, "Through the dark we bring a light, now you will see," which is from the perspective of the captain of the ship, who's basically saying we're gonna make it. And then you could even take that message and bring it outside of the story, and it's a song about making it. It's a song about making it to your destination, whether that be a mental place or a physical place. But it's supposed to be heavy metal inspiration.
And the album's title track, Ghost of Humanity, is about how, the prediction of the future, or possibly the future that we're going to be living in.
You remember earlier I was saying that it's there was a point where somebody gets the idea I miss being in power. Let's take that back. Ghost of Humanity is where that surges forth. This is where the title of the album and the song sort of come into play, where the Ghost of Humanity you could view as the people who have left the planet, the ones who are all that's left, like a ghost of what this like people used to be. And in that way, you can kind of view it as like a sad thing, and you hope that they win. But then in the title track, Ghost of Humanity, you feel the malice, jealousy, judgment that we never reconciled with come to the forefront. That is also able to be viewed as the ghost of humanity, because it's like this thing that's haunting us still, even though we've gone to a completely different planet. And then from that perspective, you can say, oh, okay, like this is actually like the bad stuff that we have to be dealing with here. And that song is angry, man. Like that song has riffs and just screaming and like all that great stuff. We wanted to make the anger and frustration of that song a big point, for sure.
Is it difficult kind of doing promotional singles for an album that has a story? Because you got to kind of pick the story apart to present it to people.
It can be tough, for sure. I think one of the things that we wanted to do in the making of the record was to make sure that the songs could stand out on their own, just in case. I think, like, particularly, actually, no, yeah, all three of the ones that we've put out, I think sound pretty great on their own. If you were to just play them in an isolated situation, sure. I'm clearly bad at vocabulary, but they would all still sound pretty great, and that lends itself to when we're performing, we can like put the songs in any order we want, and even play some stuff off the old record. But that's an interesting, like, that is a challenge that you bring up, for sure, and it's definitely something to keep in mind for bands that write concepts, for sure.
You have a guest artist on the album that does orchestrations and keyboardist, Vikram Shankar, who I'm actually interviewing next week, which is kind of ironic. But how did you get Vikram involved?
Oh my God, that is so cool. Hell yeah. So Vic came on board at the recommendation of a Mr. Jack Costo, who plays guitar in Seven Spires. That's actually why I am out here, having gotten off a plane in a car right now. We're on the way to Mad with Power Festival in Madison, Wisconsin, where Seven Spires is headlining. That's pretty fun. But Jack and the rest of Seven Spires grew up in the same scene that Ice Giant did. So we've all been friends for a very long time. I know Seven Spires has wonderful orchestrations all over their albums. And so I just hit up Jack one day asking, who do you know who does orchestrations incredibly well? And he sang the praises of Vikram like to the ends of the earth. And that was all the endorsement that I needed. Which then you can fast forward to when Vikram first sent us the orchestration parts for Serenity of Darkness. That's the first of his work that we heard, and my jaw hit the floor. I was like, oh my God, like this was a cool song. Now this is a freaking great song.
You mentioned that your first album, your self-titled demo, per se, what sounded like it was recorded in the basement. And a lot of people today, they are recording at home, or they are recording via file sharing. You guys actually went into the studio. You went into Sonic Titan Studios to put this album together. So that's actually kind of unique.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, studio pricing is just so much nowadays. And like for bands at our level and like just like working folks, it's just hard to afford that kind of stuff. And like we're very thankful that home studio technology has come so far that you can make a really good record out of it. It's definitely a treat for us to be able to use the actual studio. When we were doing vocal tracking, Eddie and I spent 8 days straight there, just like sleeping in the studio, getting our own food and cooking and stuff. It was really neat because we felt like it's kind of like old school experience of like, okay, we're at the studio, we're doing nothing else except we're like recording vocals this week. And it was really, really cool. So I find that like fortunate, like you've illustrated here, that we've been able to do that, for sure.
Just as important as the music when it comes to heavy metal music is the album artwork. You guys knocked it out of the park with this. You used artist Adam Burke of Nightjar Illustrations. How did you get him involved for this project?
That's another wonderful question. Adam is freaking amazing, and we became aware of him because he did records. We did the album art for like Unleash the Archers and Fit for an Autopsy, and then our friends in Scorched Moon, who we are touring with in a couple weeks. And so we thought to ourselves, like, oh my God, like we should at least see how much this dude costs. And when we found it was rather reasonable, we were like, well, okay, then let's do this. I literally sent him a napkin drawing of like what I thought like might be a cool album art, and that was the first thing that he sent back, was that ridiculous painting that I'm sure you've seen at this point. I was like, again, jaw on the floor, just blown away. Like, this guy is so good at what he does. We actually have the oil painting of his displayed in the house that Dan and I live in, and we have like this cool little shrine to the band as a result of it. So it's pretty cool.
Is the new album gonna have a physical release, or is it just gonna be digital only?
Physical for sure. We actually just ordered the CDs for it a couple days ago. We are told that they will be there in time for the upcoming tour. So, hoping that it's the same. We would love to do a vinyl release so that we could have that crazy artwork as like a fold out thing. Cause like, man, wouldn't that be cool?
Absolutely. Speaking of the tour, a tour of Ice and Fire kicks off on September 8th through the 15th. You're touring with Scorched Moon. I assume these are friends of yours?
Absolutely. So I had lived in Atlanta for about 2 years, and during my time down there, I had made friends with the Scorched Moon fellas, and we just so happened to be releasing records at similar times. So we figured, why not just conquer the East Coast together? And it really worked out for the booking of the tour as well, because we did this all ourselves. Basically, everything in the South was booked by Scorched Moon, and then everything in the North was booked by us, and it just worked out.
You're kicking off the tour with an album release party on September 8th in Boston at the Middle East. You're going to play the album in its entirety. That seems pretty cool, and it's always cool when you can play in front of a hometown crowd.
Playing a hometown crowd is really special because we just love folks around our area give to just bands in general, as well as us in particular. We've been hyping up this album for all 6 years that we've been doing it. It's finally the culmination. It's the apex of all that hype. And so we are just so excited to finally like deliver on that. Like, it's been so long of me saying like, I promise this record is sick. And now we get to actually do it. And so I'm excited. It's going to be really, really nice. And then it'll be Scorched Moon's first time up in Boston. So that'll be great.
Do you have any plans for live shows after the little mini tour?
No current plan, but something cooking for maybe shortly after the album. Can't tell you what yet, but when we execute on that, then we'll certainly do more live shows to promote that thing as well.
This album is being independently released by yourself. Have you shopped it around to a label?
No, not yet. It's hard to say what is best for a band as far as being on a label goes, because we're small fries right now. Like, we hope to get bigger, but for the time being, like, we're not going to get on like Metal Blade or Nuclear Blast or anything like that. We just try to do as much of the work as we can in-house, because that way, all our money stays with us, all our rights stays with us. There's going to come a time where we're going to need things like management and a label, and we're just kind of waiting until that is like, we're waiting until the right time to do that. Hopefully in the future we could do something like a Nuclear Blast or a Spine Farm relationship or something like that.
Do you work on any other music projects, or does Ice Giant pretty much take up all your time?
So Ice Giant is my only band right now, but like I mentioned earlier, Dan and Alex are both in Perennial Quest, which are an excellent power metal band, sort of similar to Dragon Force. So if you enjoy that kind of thing, they're very fun. And then Eddie has a project down in Maryland called Eviscerum, which he's writing for right now. As far as music goes, that's Ice Giant is the only band that I have. My day work is in mental health, so that's what I'm doing. During the day, I help autistic folks. So yeah, that's the other part of my life there.
Rewarding on both ends.
Absolutely, 100%.
So the last question is, how did you come up with the name Ice Giant?
That's also a great question. I really, really wish there was a more poetic answer to that. But it sounded so cool. And like, then like it was actually kind of weird because like I came up with the name and then I kind of like researched what it could mean after that. And once I saw it's like, oh, like this could be a mythological creature, but it could also be like a massive ice planet like Neptune or whatever. I was like, wow, that's like so cool on two fronts. So yeah, that's our name. I was gosh, how old was I when I came up with that? This was 2014, so this was like almost 10 years ago. So I must have been 20 back then. So I was a kid. Give me a break.
Those are all the questions I have for you, Liv. The new Ice Giant album, Ghost of Humanity, comes out September 8th. Great album. I enjoyed talking with you about it, and I wish you the best of luck going forward.
Awesome. Thanks so much, George. I really appreciate this time with you.
Once again, I want to thank Olive Gallop of Ice Giant for coming on the Rock is George podcast. Be sure to check out their latest album, Ghost of Humanity, out September 8th, independently. Head over to your favorite music streaming app. Take a listen to what's available. If you like what you hear, buy a physical copy. Support the artist. For all things Ice Giant, head over to their official Facebook page /Ice Giant Band. I also want to thank David at Freeman Promotions for making this interview possible. You've been great. I've been George Dionne. Discover your next favorite artist on the Rock is George podcast.